This is November 2nd, 2021, beautiful city of the Villages, Florida. My name is Jong-woo Han. I am the president of Korean War Legacy Foundation, which has about 1,500 interviews of Korean War veterans, not only from the United States, but all other countries that participated in the war. We are doing this to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the breakout of the Korean War, which was 2020, but still we are doing this so that we can include more interviews and direct witness from the veterans who were fighting for Korea.
Yes.
We are doing this to preserve your memory, first of all, because it's been a long time already, and we want to honor your service. Okay. You answer the call from the United States, and you helped Korea to rebuild their economy and democracy. But at the same time, this interview will be analyzed by the teachers here in the United States who are working for my foundation, and they write the curricular resources for the students and teachers in the classroom when they talk about the Korean War.
Okay.
So that's why we are doing this. I think it's a very important thing to do, and it's my great pleasure to meet you, sir, and thank you for coming. It's my honor to know of you. Please introduce yourself. What is your name and spell it for the audience, please?
My name is John Davie. That's D-A-V as in Victor, I-E.
Davie.
Davie.
That's not usual name.
No, very unusual with especially in the Far East, they used to say you have two names, John and Davie.
Right. Very popular name.
Yes.
But used mostly Dave or David?
Just John.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is your birthday?
It's 9/12/1933.
You kidding me?
Yeah.
It's my birthday.
Is that right?
In a different year, though.
a little bit.
September 12th.
Yep, September 12th, 1933.
That's my birthday, too.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. Very nice meeting you.
Very nice meeting you.
Yeah. You were born in a very good day. Where were you born?
I was born in Olean, New York.
Could you spell it?
O-L-E-A-N.
Olean, New York?
Yeah, it's about 60 miles south of Buffalo on the New York-Pennsylvania border.
I'm from central New York.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Syracuse, New York.
Syracuse, okay. I spent my commercial time after the military with IBM in Endicott, New York.
Endicott.
So I know Syracuse very well. I have two granddaughters that graduated from Syracuse.
You and I friend. Instantly.
Yes.
Right? We're sharing the birthday and we share the central New York together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could you put a little bit up of little bit? Yes. Good. So tell me about your family background, your parents, your father, mother, and your siblings when you were growing up.
Okay, well, I'm from a family of 7 children.
Wow.
And it was, we grew up through the early...
Were you the eldest?
The eldest was my sister. She was, Betty was born in 1925, 1925. And then my brother was born in 1928.
So you are the third?
I'm the third. There was another child between my brother and I, but unfortunately did not survive at birth. And then I have 3 other younger sisters.
So tell me about the school you went through.
I went to a public school in Olean, New York, and it was a very nice experience. I would say I was not an academic as much as I was an athletic. I did more athletic things and didn't prepare. At that time, we didn't talk much about college. And,
so when did you graduate? What is the name
I graduated
of high school?
It's Olean High School, and I graduated in 1952.
1952. But before you continue, did you learn anything about Korea at the time?
At that particular time, no. I hadn't. Well, I did know in my senior year because several of my friends had joined and gone, and unfortunately, a couple of them were perished as first end troops into Korea.
So you came to know about Korea?
Yes, in my senior year of high school, I was very well. I would say in 1951 to 52, we got to know more about Korea.
But before that,
Before that, no, nothing really.
But not even the geography class that they didn't talk about Korea in the map, or
No, we were more probably centered on Japan and the Philippines that way. And speaking of that, my father was a chief machinist mate, a petty officer in the Seabees in the Second World War on Guam. So he was.
So you didn't know anything about Korea?
No, nothing.
Other than the breakout, and then
Yeah.
were you kind of thinking that you may be dragged into the war?
Yes, at that time, when coming out of high school, not going, I wasn't going to college. I actually got a job in a factory, and was working in a machine shop.
You mean after graduation?
Right, yeah,
Oh.
from the graduation. So I was working, and there was always the thought of being drafted into the military.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined the U.S. Marine Air Reserve.
U.S. Marine, yep.
Air Reserve in Niagara Falls, New York,
Mm-hmm.
at the Naval Air Station.
When was it?
That was in that would have been in June of 1952.
Right.
And then we went through training with that, and in fact, we went through boot camp on.
So you were drafted?
No,
You enlisted?
I went and joined the reserve.
Okay.
It was, they called us weekend warriors.
Yeah.
We would go on the weekend, and then I spent I think it was a 6-week training and basic training at the naval station at Niagara Falls,
Mm-hmm.
and we were trained by a returning Chosun Reservoir sergeant.
What do you mean by that? Returning?
He was returning from the
Oh,
war,
I see.
from Korea,
Yeah.
and they brought him back to be our drill instructor.
Uh-huh.
And he was pretty well, I would say very strict.
Do you
And
know what's his name?
I cannot remember the name right now.
So you were instructed by the Korean War veteran who fought at the chosen few.
Yes, yeah, he was
And returned from Korea.
returned from Korea. Yes.
So what did he tell you about the Korean War?
That what his instruction was going to be that would save your life. In other words, if you didn't pay attention to the drills and what he was talking about, the weaponry, just different things that we talked about at the time, but it was mostly just, being a drill sergeant, he imposed his will on us and wanted to make us better Marines, better soldiers, and it was quite an intense training. He didn't fool around, and it was. He just said it. It was your life is on the line, so pay attention.
But did he mention anything about Korea to you guys?
He didn't talk a whole lot about it, other than the severity of the weather, how bad it was in the coming, when they had to pull out of the reservoir in Chosun,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, as they said, they weren't retreating. They were just, what was it? I forget the exact words, but
Yeah.
I don't remember that right now. I got to tell you the truth, it's so long ago.
So he didn't mention anything about Korea?
Just the ruggedness of the terrain, the you know the poverty that was going on with the war itself, and but he didn't, I don't think that, in that particular case, when you have a drill sergeant, he doesn't talk to you, man to man, so much as it is demanding your presence and learning what they have to drill.
Got it. So after that boot camp, where did you go?
I went from there to that's when I went in and enlisted in the U.S. Air Force, and transferred to in November of 1952, and that's when I was sent to Samsung Air Force Base in Geneva, New York.
Yep, you were there.
Mm-hmm.
And what did you learn from there?
Well, the Air Force basic training wasn't quite as intense as the Marine training that we went through, but it was a very intense training from November to January, which was it was bitter cold on the Finger Lakes. So we graduated in January, and I was just transferred 3 miles from my basic training up to the Air Force Hospital at Samson, which was the hospital was the actual East Coast receiving center for many of the wounded coming back from Korea.
You mean at the Samson Air Base?
Samson Air Force Base, yes. It was a large, huge medical facility. And I brought here in this airman's book that it's of the base, and it tells you pretty much the. Let's see if I can find. I should have framed it out.
So, what kind of training did you receive at?
Well, it was general basic training at Samson. You went through the drilling, the classroom study. They had many courses that we took, and we did a lot of drilling outside, and had to go through physical training. It was pretty much a standard basic training situation until for about 12 weeks.
And then what did you do?
And then after that, like I was assigned to the Air Force Hospital to the chief. I worked under the chief dietitian as a medical. It would be medical specialist, administrative specialist, and was assigned to a group right there at the hospital, and basically worked with, most of the time, we worked with the administration of handling civilian,
Wounded soldier?
No, it's not the wounded, but the actual dependents of the families that were stationed on the base. They had several dependent families there, that were civilian, that would come in, wives and children of the troops, and that was ours. We handled most of that, and all the food service portion for the whole hospital. So I did mostly work with that in administrative work.
So can you give me more detail what you actually did?
Okay, and in doing what I did was did more accounting work. We would admit and discharge patients and take their money. The thing that I have to remember is back at that time, like a young married mother would come in to have a baby. At the hospital at that time, she would have that baby. It would cost like $7.50.
That's it.
For delivery and
That's it.
discharge.
In your medical facility.
Yes.
They had to pay, but it's $7.
Yeah. But in today's world, it's astronomical for what you'd have to pay for it. But I remember that part of it. But I also did a lot of I did the head count for all of the officers coming into the mess hall, and because they had to pay for their meals.
Oh.
Because they get a surcharge, and I'd have to make sure that they paid their fair share for a meal. So I got to know all of the doctors and everything. But we would coming through doing that at the station that I was at. A lot of the wounded would be wheeled in early, and it was very tremendous. A lot of psychological problems. Many wounded where you've seen, they got their arms up and they've got where they had grafted skin to them. It was an eye-opening experience to see the wounded come in. Mm-hmm. But they were well treated and taken care of at the hospital. Mm.
Did you have any Korean War veteran actually taken from Korea and hospitalized in Samsung Air Base?
They had. You mean American
soldiers who were in Korea and came back?
I'm not sure that that was not wounded. I don't recall any in my area, but I'm sure that there were several that did come back and were stationed. But the war was over in 1953.
Right.
They closed Sampson Air Force Base in 1956 because it was no longer needed as a training base. Because it was the equivalent to what they do today in San Antonio. So we were the training base for everything east of the Mississippi.
I see.
And so it was. You were assigned, once you went through that, then you were assigned out. And fortunately, I guess I was one of the lucky ones to be able to be sent up to the base hospital and work there. But I left I was shipped out of the base hospital in 1955 to Évreux, France. So where I spent the rest of my enlistment.
I see.
So I was discharged from. I was in the 465th Field Hospital. It was like a MASH outfit. It was 19-bed infirmary. My job was.
You mean in France?
In France, my job was like radar in MASH. I worked for the flight surgeon and 3 doctors, but that was after the Korean War.
I see.
And I was in charge of air evacuation. A lot of it was a whole different change of events as far as responsibility.
And so when you served in Samsung Air Base,
yes,
were there any story that you want to share that related to the Korean War? Family?
Well, I I had several childhood friends who were stationed in Korea,
Oh.
and I have one that I had a card because in 1954 I was going to be married, and I received a card in 1953 from a good friend with his, all in his army garb in Korea, that had sent and told me how lucky that I was to be home and not have to be in the chosen frozen land of Korea. It was in wintertime, and he said it was a very bitter
Memories.
tough time for him. Yeah. I had another good friend who was a paratrooper in Korea that made one of the early jumps and was wounded, and later on came back. After the war, we were good friends, but he would never talk much about what happened. But he was wounded in a parachute drop. They blew off his calf of his leg.
Oh.
But later he became a very still worked his way back and became a very good athlete. And I had another good friend that was in grade school that we had heard, because everything seemed to be so distant to us, that had been killed in Korea. So there's many of our friends and other families. There were many cases where we felt so saddened by what happened, but we knew that they had to be there to defend our freedom.
So when you work in the Samsung Air Base, what was the kind of reactions from the American people about the Korean War? Did they follow up with it? Did they talk a lot about it, or what was it?
Yeah,
how was it?
There was, people talked a lot about the Korean War and who, where their families and friends were. It was quite a bit of discussion from time to time, wondering what it was like there and what you would experience if you had to go. And there was many discussions like that, and the people were very supportive of the war. And but with everything that was going on, many felt that we should have continued, and of course MacArthur wanted to, but that changed.
But so you're saying that many people really concerned about it, but why is it known as a forgotten war?
Well, I think that they got so callous about the whole thing that everything was being more political, and everything it became kind of a forgotten war in that respect, because people, the Second World War seemed to take all of the accolades of what went on.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why people just kind of shut down on the Korean War or what, but it was not, you were not received as well, not as bad as the Vietnam War, but people, it took it more for granted, I think, in that respect. But, there were, many discussions about Korea, but nothing, I don't think that the common families were all that tied into it, unless they had a member there that had been there and had been wounded or fought and came back or whatever.
So you never saw Korean War veteran returning from Korea when you were in Samsung Air Base?
I might, there's probably several of them there, but it was so big that, you didn't know, not specifically in the squadron that I was in, that had come back, and just I knew personal friends that had come back.
So even though you were not in Korea, but your senior from high school, your friends went to Korea, fought for Korea, and now Korea, do you know what Korea stands for now in terms of its economy and democracy? Do you follow up with the Korea?
Oh yeah.
What do you know about it?
Well, the big turning factor, as I was telling you, after I went back, I was discharged. I went back to school and went to a college, Alfred University. It was the State University of New York at Alfred for 2 years, and got a 2-year degree. And then I worked for a little bit in an accounting firm in Olean, in my hometown. And I started going to school nights at St. Bonaventure University.
I know that.
And then finally ended up going full-time and getting my degree when I was 33 years old. I got my business degree, and IBM Corporation hired me from the campus. And I went to work for IBM.
What did you do there?
I was in purchasing. I ended up becoming an international procurement manager, which is where I'm leading to. It eventually sent me to Korea.
When did you go to Korea?
I was in Korea. I went in 1958, or no, 1985. I'm sorry, 1985, and we were doing a lot of work with Samsung at that time in Suwon, and that was when I spent a lot of time in Seoul at the Sheila Hotel, and of course the famous Itaewon.
Yeah, I'm from Itaewon.
Is that right? Yeah, that was very, very prevalent at that time. But it was amazing. When I first started, I could see where there were some resemblances from the war, but by the time of the Olympics in 1988, Korea, it was really starting to come back.
So what was it like? You are officially Korean War veteran, even though you were not in the theater. And now you are in Korea as an IBM procurement officer. What did you buy actually from Korea?
We were working with Samsung. They were manufacturing monitors for us, for the computers.
So,
and in fact, we had what they called international procurement offices, which was run by Korean nationals. So they became our interpreter and would pick us up at Kimpo and take us to the business and do all of the interpretation or translations for us. And I did, one of the officers, he was an Air Force officer for the Korean Air Force. And when we would go to Suwon, he would point out in the mountains why we couldn't take photographs and things, that there was different emplacements up there, and the highways, how they built the highways so they could move everything apart and make it into a runway. Yeah. And it was amazing. It would take us probably 45 minutes to get to Suwon in 1985.
Right.
By 1988, it would take us 2.5 hours because
heavy traffic.
I had my first ride in a Hyundai
Mm-hmm.
in Seoul, much before they ever were introduced in the United States. And I asked him, what kind of a car is this? And he said, it's a Hyundai. And he says, they will come to the United States one day. And
Yeah,
they did.
now
And now look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was, I mean, you could see much of the destruction that had been done, like I say, in 1985, but how reconstruction and building, Seoul was a fabulous city.
So you are in a very unique kind of position or situation where that you could imagine how was it like in 1950 when your senior and friends went to Korea.
That's
now
right.
you are looking at kind of modern Korea in 1980s.
That's right.
What were you thinking?
I said it was very difficult to believe what had happened, but you only had to go to the 38th parallel to find out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was it was night and day, north and south.
Yeah.
And I just it was very difficult to believe, that so much destruction had taken place. And I'd seen many of the war films and different things previously, and it's just hard to believe that from all of that rubble, what has the democracy that we had grown from, in Seoul.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful.
So how was the business relationship between Samsung and IBM?
Very good. It was heavy negotiations back and forth, but we had a very good relationship, and it was amazing to me. With Samsung, they took me one day. They took us to their microwave plant, and I never realized that they were making every microwave in the world. They were 90% of the microwave. You'd go in there, and there was GE and Sharp and everybody else. Every line that you could ever see, all of the products were going down with the names going on. They were being made by Samsung, and this was back in the late 80s.
Isn't that kind of amazing? The Korea was completely demolished. They didn't know anything about computer at the time.
That's right.
Now they are making monitors, and the Samsung is the largest market share of semiconductor, the computer chips in the world.
That's right.
Huh.
And at that time, we were IBM was one of the top. Burlington, Vermont, and Manassas, Virginia, were the chip and computer. They made chips and were the leaders in the world. Today, everything is gone, and I don't know. It's just amazing to me as to what has happened in that respect.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm sorry I can't give you a lot more about the actual wartime part, and that's something that troubles a veteran. I was in during that time, but not physically in the wartime. But
they needed you at the Samsung Air Base so that they can continue on the war. So your contribution has been made.
It worked, and I look back. My family has been totally military. My uncle was a pilot in a B-17, shot down over Germany and prisoner of war of the Germans for 11 months, and came back home.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was in the Second World War in the South Pacific. So it's been, our family has totally been indoctrinized in military over the years, but I was very fortunate to be a part of the military, but was glad to get out and work in industry too.
Mm-hmm. So anything you want to say to Korean people about?
Well, I would say to the Korean people that they are very gracious. They're very humble. And knowing, I felt, going back later as a business person, I was treated very well. I know there was a lot, at that time in the 80s, there were some real hard times going on, and people were not overly happy with some of the things in the government, but it was a very joyful experience to go back to see a rebuilt Korea.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it was just, and not having been there during the wartime, could only imagine what it was. But you always felt the presence of their security, because when you flew into Kimpo, no cameras to be taking pictures out the windows of the airplanes, and at that time, it was very militarized, and especially when it was the Olympics, it was really locked down hard, and they kept. But as far as the Korean people, I have great respect and thank them for accepting us as business people, even though we were there and I as military at the time. And in fact, the 8th Army was still there.
Yeah, of course. So, you were Korean War veteran. You tell the Samsung people that you are Korean War veteran, right?
Yes.
Did the fact that you were Korean War veteran affects you in your business with Samsung? Did you have a better relationship because you?
Yes, I would say so, because they were very, I think, more respectful in a way. Mm-hmm. And I know that right where the International Procurement Office was for IBM, right down below was a big military museum of all of the equipment that had been used. And the Rook Army was down there, and they had tents and kind of barracks, and they were doing some instruction there, and then moved off. I'm not sure where they went later, but they took that whole facility and moved it away. But they were very strict about. I knew the one thing they were very strict about was air raids. You have, when they would say there was going to be an air raid, you went inside, you
Evacuate.
stayed away. Yeah, stayed away from windows. You didn't. It's a very serious thing.
So it was a drill, emergency
Yes.
drill. Yes.
You felt the urgency and
Yep.
and somewhat of a fear. So it's not. We just don't know where this world is going with all of the nonsense that goes with it.
Great.
I don't know if I've helped you.
No, it helps. But can you show me the pictures? Can you show the cover first?
Okay.
Can you put it onto your chins? Yeah, like that. Right, the airman, Samsung Air Force Base, New York. And can you just show something that you...
I can show you. Let me see if I can find the hospital here. I was trying to... Yeah, this is it here. Should be something in here. Here. This is some of the physical therapy that they did.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you can see.
Can you go up? Yes. Physical therapy, yes. Can you hold it like that? Mm-hmm. Hold on. All right. And look for another pages, please.
Yeah, okay.
To show.
In here, okay, here's...
Just hold up. Show that to the camera, please.
Okay, and this again is, here's where they're working on...
What is it?
This is in their, this is where they're working on legs, it's the, oh golly, what do I want to say?
Can you show it again?
Yeah, where they work on hands, legs.
Just bring it a little bit down. A little more. More. Thank you. So that I can see your face.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And there should be one in here that I was looking at. That this is a lot of X-ray technicians. Oh, right here. You can see, here's a wounded. Right over here on this side. See where they're, if you can see the graft of the skin from the arm to the...
Yeah, they are grafting it.
Yeah.
Yes.
All of this. This, this is it was a huge hospital. And yeah, the USAF hospital it's got there. And then this was like a yearbook because it had all your
Where are you?
picture. I'd have to find it here. This is a training squadron. Let's see. Oh, this. Let's see. Right there is a picture of the hospital.
Oh.
Right at the bottom part.
Yep. Yes.
And you go there now, and that is all a state park. Everything is gone. Everything is gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, if I can find it here. Oh boy. I had it. I should have marked the page for you, and I didn't. I had it. Oh boy. I had it there one time and I don't know what I did with it all. Yeah, get them here. There. They were all officers.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get.
Show that to the camera.
You can see.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Mm-hmm. And they had the. I don't know where I hid that part, but I had it in there. If I could only find it.
And you are in the black dots there.
Yeah, where the dot is, yeah.
So the dot is above your head, right?
Yeah, I think it is.
Yep. Excellent. Finally, you find it.
I found it, yeah.
Yeah.
See, well, see, I was looking at all of these dots here. These are all my buddies that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was, this was quite a, you can see the training area and one of the basic training
Got it.
drill halls. If you can see that or not.
All right. So thank you very much for sharing this. And I really appreciate you coming and talking about your experience. And that really be the part of your whole legacy as a Korean War veteran. And I want to thank you again, John Davie. You have a very good birthday.
I do. Yes, I do.
Thank you, sir.
A good Virgo.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.